It was the summer of 2007, and my parents had decided to send me off to summer camp. I was ecstatic at the idea of spending my days swimming in the lake, making s'mores by the campfire, and hanging out with new friends. Little did I know, this summer camp experience would be one that I would never forget, but not for the happy memories I had imagined. The first few days at camp were amazing. I was having the time of my life, exploring the woods, playing games with my cabin mates, and learning new skills like archery and canoeing. But one night, everything changed. It was a hot and humid night, and my cabin mates and I were struggling to fall asleep. The rustling of leaves from the trees outside and the chirping of crickets seemed to be amplified in the silence of the night. Suddenly we heard a loud, blood-curdling howl coming from the woods. We all sat up in our beds, trying to figure out what it was. "It's just a wolf," one of my cabin mates assured us, but even she seemed a little shaken. Just as we were about to settle back down, we heard it again, and this time it sounded much closer. Fear took over as we clutched onto each other, wondering if we were safe in our cabin. We could hear footsteps approaching, and we could see a figure lurking outside our window. We were too scared to scream, and before we knew it, the figure had disappeared. The next morning, we were all too scared to even talk about what had happened the night before. We didn't want to believe that something or someone was lurking in the woods watching us. But as the days went by, strange things kept happening. One night, we heard a loud commotion coming from the campfire area. When we went to investigate, we found all the chairs and logs overturned, as if something had dragged them around. We also noticed that some of our belongings were missing. We were afraid to even think about what could have caused this. As the days passed, more and more campers and counselors started to experience strange occurrences. Some claimed to have seen shadows watching them, while others heard whispers in the night. One girl even woke up to find all her belongings scattered around her bed, as if someone had been looking through them. Camp counselors and staff tried to reassure us that these were just pranks being played by other campers. But deep down we knew there was something more supernatural happening. Our once happy and carefree camp atmosphere had turned into a place of fear and unease. One evening, a group of us decided to sneak out of our cabins and explore the summer campgrounds. We wanted to try and find any evidence of what could be causing these strange occurrences. As we walked through the woods, we came across an old cabin that looked abandoned. We cautiously approached it, and as we peered through the windows, we saw a figure in the darkness staring back at us. We all screamed and ran back to our cabins, not knowing what else to do. The next morning, when we told the camp counselors what had happened, they laughed it off and told us that the cabin was just used for storage, and there was no way anyone could have been living there. But we couldn't ignore the feeling that we were being watched. We started to see the figure more often, sometimes standing outside our cabins, and it always seemed to be getting closer. We didn't know what it wanted, but we were afraid that it was after us. Finally, one night, one of the counselors came clean and told us the truth. There had been a young girl who used to attend the camp, but unfortunately, she had drowned in the lake. Her ghost was said to haunt the summer camp, looking for the friends she had lost and trying to relive her summer camp memories. We were all scared, but also sad for the little girl who just wanted to enjoy her summer camp experience like we had. From that night on, we left out extra s'mores for her and tried to communicate with her spirit through Ouija boards. As the end of summer camp drew near, we all promised to never forget the little girl and the strange occurrences that happened during our stay. Even though it was a terrifying experience, it brought us all closer together and taught us to never take anything for granted. Since then, I have never looked at summer camp the same way. Whenever I hear the sound of a howling wolf or footsteps outside my window at night, I can't help but wonder if it's really just a prank or something more supernatural. But one thing's for sure, that summer camp experience will always be etched in my memory, hauntingly real and unforgettable. I'll never forget the summer of 1995, the year I attended Camp Green Woods. I was just a naive 12-year-old girl, excited to spend my summer in the great outdoors with new friends. Little did I know this would turn out to be the most terrifying experience of my life. From the moment I arrived at camp, things felt off. The atmosphere was eerie, the trees seemed to whisper, and the air was thick with a sense of dread. But being a kid, I brushed it off and chalked it up to being nervous about being away from home for the first time. The first few days at camp were great. We hiked, swam in the lake, and roasted marshmallows by the campfire. Nothing out of the ordinary happened until the fourth night. I was awoken by the sound of footsteps outside our cabin. I assumed it was just one of the counselors checking on us, but the footsteps seemed to be getting closer and closer. My heart was pounding in my chest as I heard the doorknob jiggle. I was frozen in fear, unsure of what to do. Suddenly the door creaked open and a figure stepped into the room. It was a tall man, dressed in all black with a ski mask covering his face. I could feel my heart beating out of my chest as he slowly made his way towards my bunk. I was paralyzed with fear, but somehow managed to let out a blood-curdling scream. The man quickly turned around and ran out of the cabin. The other girls woke up in a panic, and we all huddled together, too scared to even move. The counselors were immediately alerted, and they searched the campgrounds, but found no one. We were all shaken up, but the next morning the counselors assured us that it must have been a prank from some older campers. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about that man. His presence felt sinister, like he was there for a specific purpose. As the days went on, more strange things started happening. We would wake up to find our belongings scattered around our cabin, even though we had locked the door before going to bed. The lake water turned blood red one morning, and the campfire seemed to glow with an otherworldly intensity. But the creepiest thing of all was the strange noises we would hear at night. It sounded like someone or something was scratching at the walls of our cabin. It was like something out of a horror movie, but this was real life, and there was no escape. One night, as we were all gathered around the campfire, one of the counselors told us the story of Camp Green Woods. Many years ago, a group of campers had gone missing, never to be found again. Rumor has it that they were taken by a vengeful entity that haunts the campgrounds to this day. I thought it was all just a scary story until I saw it with my own eyes. It was the last night of camp, and we were all asleep in our cabin when I was awoken by the sound of someone whispering my name. At first I thought it was just my imagination, but then I saw her. A girl, no older than 10, stood at the foot of my bed. Her skin was pale, and her eyes were empty black pits. She kept whispering my name over and over again. I was too terrified to move. I couldn't even scream for help. And just like that, she disappeared into thin air. The next morning, I couldn't wait to leave that place. As I said my goodbyes to my friends, I couldn't help but wonder what if that girl had taken me instead. The whole ride home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. To this day, I still have nightmares about that summer. It's been years, but the memories of Camp Green Woods still haunt me. I've heard rumors that the camp has since been shut down due to strange occurrences and mysterious disappearances. But one thing is for sure, I'll never be able to look at summer camps the same way again. The horror I experienced that summer is something that will stay with me forever. And that, my friends, is a true scary story. It was the first night of summer camp, and everything seemed eerie under the dimming light. I didn't have much experience with writing stories, but the events of that night are etched into my memory like a nightmare. I was placed in cabin 13 with a group of other campers, all strangers to me. The cabin creaked with every gust of wind, and the old peeling paint on the walls seemed to whisper tales of bygone days. As darkness descended, the campfire crackled outside, its flickering flames casting dancing shadows across the forest floor. As we sat around the fire, toasting marshmallows and sharing ghost stories, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every rustle of the leaves sent a jolt of fear through me, and the distant hoot of an owl sounded like a warning. But my fellow campers laughed off my unease, dismissing it as the overactive imagination of a newcomer. As the night wore on, the camp counselor announced it was time for bed. Reluctantly, we trudged back to cabin 13, the darkness pressing in on all sides. The creaking of the floorboards seemed to echo through the empty corridors, and the shadows played tricks on my tired mind. I settled into my bunk, pulling the scratchy blanket up to my chin. Sleep eluded me as I tossed and turned, the sounds of the forest outside the only company in the stillness of the night. Then, just as I felt myself drifting off, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. I shot up in bed, heart pounding in my chest. The other campers were stirring in their bunks, confusion and fear written on their faces. Without a word, we all rushed outside, following the source of the scream into the darkness. The campgrounds were bathed in an eerie silver light, the moon casting a ghostly glow over the scene before us. And there, at the edge of the clearing, lay the camp counselor, her face contorted in terror, her body twisted in a grotesque pose. Panic swept through the group as we realized that we were not alone in the woods. Something sinister lurked in the shadows, watching us with malevolent eyes. Without a second thought, we fled back to cabin 13, slamming the door shut behind us. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with fear and uncertainty. The old cabin seemed to groan under the weight of our terror, its walls closing in around us like a sinister embrace. And then, just as we thought we were safe, a voice whispered from the darkness, "You can run, but you can't hide." The words sent a chill down my spine, and I knew in that moment that we were not dealing with a mere prankster or wild animal. Something far more sinister was at play in the depths of the forest, and we were its unwitting prey. As the night stretched on, the tension in cabin 13 became palpable. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind rattling the windows, sent us into a frenzy of fear. And then, just as the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, a figure appeared at the cabin door. It was the camp counselor, or what was left of her. Her eyes were empty, her skin ashen, and her mouth twisted into a silent scream. Without a word, she beckoned us into the forest, a silent promise of unspeakable horrors awaiting us. Terrified and on the verge of hysteria, we knew we had no choice but to follow. Into the depths of the forest we went, the trees looming overhead like ancient sentinels, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. And as we stumbled through the undergrowth, a realization dawned on me. We were not the first to fall prey to the darkness that lurked within those woods. The remains of past campers littered the forest floor, their bodies twisted and broken, their faces frozen in silent screams of agony. It was a graveyard of horrors, a testament to the evil that resided in the heart of the summer camp. And then, just as we thought all hope was lost, we stumbled upon a clearing bathed in a soft, ethereal light. At its center stood a figure cloaked in shadows, its eyes gleaming with malevolence. It was the source of our nightmares, the embodiment of fear itself. As it advanced towards us, a primal terror gripped my heart, and I knew that our fate was sealed. The horrors of that night would haunt me for the rest of my days, a reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the edge of our reality. And as the shadows closed in around us, engulfing us in an endless night, I knew that I would never escape the summer camp horror that had claimed us all.